So just going to go back as I did, or as I've been doing every day actually, just sort of go back and say a bit where we've been. And hopefully by doing that we then can get a fuller sense of where we are today, what we're doing today. And I think this is quite helpful as a practice generally, this sort of reflective practice of just recognising where we've been to get a greater sense of where we are now, what makes us, what creates us in this moment. And I started in the first day looking at these different qualities that create our current experience. So the first one I described as what we might call as the adaptive modes of being, and the second group was the authentic groups of being. And these two I think are very interesting and helpful, I find, to sort of get hold of them. So what's the patterns, what's the qualities in our experience that are that we've learned, that we've picked up to keep us safe, to give us some kind of context and stability in our life? What are these patterns of response to the world and ourselves that we've kind of accrued to us, that we've built around us over the course of our life? So not all of these are unhelpful, but I think it's very useful to understand those which actually are limiting us in this present place here, and those which have continued to support us. Because some of those adaptive patterns possibly are quite redundant now. They served their purpose at the time. They were absolutely vital for our survival. That's the only reason they would have been there. But now we can test, kind of check to see whether we need to allow to release them, to free ourselves into what I'm describing as a more authentic, responsive experience. And on that first day we looked at story, and I think that's quite an important part of Buddhist practice, is really to contextualize our experience within a narrative. It really helps us to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. And we used the vision of Avalokiteshvara, who is always in relation to love. So this is this flow from love to a compassionate response, which is kind of individualized, is embodied in each one of us. This is the kind of aspiration for the order, for the movement, is to really encourage that sense of trusting who we are, trusting what is trying to live through us in order to serve that which is greater than our individual parts. The second day, I was looking at this, the image, the patterning of what we describe as mandalas. So a mandala is a pattern of different elements that are always in relation to a central point. I talked about the bud, the petals coming out from the centre. So you have this kind of central point out of which grows a whole architecture, a whole landscape around this unifying central point. And I think the mandala is a very helpful image again for starting to understand our own lives, that we are not a single self, a single being. We are multiple beings manifesting differently, responding to different situations, different dynamics in relationships. So we are a whole multiplicity of manifesting beings. And a mandala is a pattern, a shape that allows all those different elements of experience, of being, to be in relationship to each other. So we don't have to banish any part of ourselves. We don't have to deny or even bolster any particular part. We're simply trying to bring the whole of ourselves all the different elements into relationship to each other and the centre. And the centre is really our core values, our deep values that we're trying to bring into being, kind of move towards, understand, intuit more deeply. And I was very pleased that Pranyamati was able to offer us the experience of focusing. It allows us to firstly build a kind of large container of awareness, but then to really explore what it is that's kind of half visible, half present in our current experience. And just by giving that kind of half-known experience some attention, some holding it in awareness, it starts to become more clear, becomes more visible to us, and it starts to have its own life. So it's as if by allowing ourselves this kind of the mandala, the full range of our mandala, these different elements, these different aspects of our nature can start to become visible, become activated in our life. So it's not saying that anything goes. That's not kind of what I'm saying. It's more that we need to try to really find out what are our values, what's really at the heart of our experience that is precious to us, that we really hold up as important in our lives, and try to align ourselves to that. Of course, always in relationship to the wise, as they're referred to, the kind of the teachings of the Buddha, but it's not to pick up those teachings blindly. It's actually trying to recognise that we have our own wisdom, our own kind of knowing that we need to honour and allow to kind of become visible to us. So that was talking about the mandala. The next day, we're looking at the qualities that we might discover, find at the heart of the mandala, or even as the ground of the mandala. So these qualities I was suggesting are spaciousness, lucidity, and sensitivity. If we just relax into our current experience, don't try to do anything with it, what naturally is present is a sense of spaciousness. When we just sort of be fully with our experience, we recognise that the ground beneath all experience is actually boundless, open space. And these sensations, these changing experiences of being, are arising into that space and dissolving back into that space. And all we're trying to do is notice that which is arising and just bring it really fully into awareness, which is this lucidity aspect, to really know our experience completely as it is. And the more that we can be clear, we can become visible to ourselves, the more we can develop this self-knowledge, it creates the foundations for sensitivity. So we are then able to respond quite cleanly out of that lucidity and spaciousness. So we could describe the spiritual life as the ground being spaciousness, the path as a path of letting go, relaxing, and the fruit of that being sensitivity, responsiveness. So that's where we got to. So the breath really is another way of looking at the qualities or the function of a mandala. So the breath really is the kind of the ground in which the whole of our being can become visible to us. The breath is that which ties together the different elements of our experience. So we have, of course, the in-breath and the out-breath, these two kind of key directions of our being, the kind of drawing in, the quietening, but also the kind of energizing on the in-breath. And then there's that releasing back into the world, that kind of connecting back out into life. There's these two basic flows of the breath that we are experiencing kind of a lot of the time completely unconsciously. It's there, but we're not really in connection with that. So the breath, as we know, needs both of these aspects. Probably, if any of us tried breathing in and not breathing out, we recognise how kind of limited that is as an experience. And it's the same with the mandala, or it kind of references back to the mandala. We need this kind of completeness, this wholeness of our experience. We need the in and the out breath, this flow back, out and return. And the breath really helps us to bring visibility to the different parts of our experience. So by noticing the quality of the breath, what that tends to bring visibility to is, where am I holding myself in my body? Where is the kind of grip in my current experience? How far into my being am I allowing this energy, this quality of the breath, the in-breath? How far am I allowing it into the body? So some days we might notice that our breath is quite high. It's kind of quite, it's only really activating kind of a small part of our body. But other days the breath might really soak down, right down into the sort of the lower gut, really sort of deep in the body. So just noticing that as an experience, without necessarily trying to change it, it's simply it's just revealing the kind of the nature of our current experience, and recognizing that those experiences can really move and flow and change if we simply just stay with the breathing process. So it's not trying to generate or kind of control our experience. Again, it's just using the breath as that process of exploration, curiosity about what is actually alive in us today. Where is our life, or how is our relationship to the whole body today? I can hear your mind whirring, Maitri Jyoti, as I'm kind of speaking, because I'm hoping this might come into the body work we're going to be doing in a while. But Maitri Jyoti is fantastic. Just to say, been really appreciating Maitri Jyoti's body work that you've been doing. I think it's really been an important element of what we're doing here today. It is kind of getting out of our heads down into this kind of very direct immediacy of the kind of the mirror of the body. Thank you. It's certainly showing, it's revealing my own body to me quite fully, which is quite shocking. But there you are. So yes, the breath as a kind of, really as a support to really knowing our experience as it is. So we're not judging the breath. We're definitely not trying to change the breath in any way. I think this is really an important part of meditation practice and, our own sort of broadening into who we are, what we are in any moment, is just really being curious about the qualities of it as it is. And the more that we do that, actually it allows the breath quite naturally to change and develop. Usually, like any experience, if we're holding ourselves back from a particular experience, a particular sensation, when we turn towards it, it allows that experience to soften and release and kind of change. If we're fighting it, it will simply get stronger and more kind of vivid. So simply to breathe with experience as it is allows the process of change to kind of flow through us quite naturally. And the breath takes place in quite an interesting space, and we quite often talk about the breath, certainly the out breath, as this kind of the connecting down through into the earth. So the out breath is a connection to the earth, a letting go, that finding the contact with the ground, finding that sense of solidity through contact. So the earth is one pole, if you like, of the breath, and then through the vertical axis of the breath we also have sky. The sky, of course, is this sense of spaciousness that can be accessed through the crown of the head, but tends to soak then down through the shoulders, through the sides of the body, to get this more sense of spaciousness, the sky-like aspect of the breath. So the breath works to unite, to bring together these two poles on the vertical axis. We then have the other axis, which is the horizontal axis. So there's the vertical, ground and sky, earth and sky, and then we have this, Sangha. So the horizontal axis is our relationship to each other and the world. And the important thing, I think, is to start to get hold of in terms of the breath is recognizing that we are completely in and of the world. That breaking down this sense of being somehow a separate and distinct object within the world. Because if we think about it, not very fully, we recognise that, my kind of relative experience is that I'm here and I'm looking out at you. But then if I just take the next step and I'm aware that Suzanne has a sense of herself and all of us are other to Suzanne. And that would be the same for all of us. So each of us have a sense of being somehow separated out from the world, but to everybody else, we're just a part of the world, part of what we're describing as other. So to really start to challenge that perspective that somehow we're separate, distinct from, through the knowledge that the breath is just this flow into the world, back through us, back into the world. It's a very connecting and releasing out of this fixity of perspective that we are somehow isolated and separate from the world. The whole world is breathing, and we are breathing with it, in it. Trees are breathing that which we give to the trees. The trees, the natural world, gives us the gift, which we then return. It's this kind of mutual interdependence, which is so kind of simple to find within the quality of the breath. So we have this vertical axis and the horizontal. And the last thing I want to say is just to, in terms of the breath, I'd like to suggest something that was told to me, which was just to get a sense that our spiritual life, our life generally, just imagine how would it be, just as we kind of had that sense of there's a me and then there's the rest of everybody, the world. How would it be to transpose also a sense of our own personal practice. So quite often when we meditate, when we're practicing, we're doing it because we want to get a particular experience. We want to find this kind of calm, this clarity, this stillness, all these kind of fantasies about what practice might look like. But how would it be to practice with the intention that we are doing this for each other, that we're actually really trying to stay in awareness, in relationship to our own experience, to actually benefit and support others? The more that we can really stay in awareness is a gift for the other. When we're in a Sangha, in a community, the more we are in awareness, in sensitivity, in connection to spaciousness, lucidity around what is present, that is a gift for each other. It's less likely that we'll split, it's less likely that we'll polarize in the community, because we are completely giving ourselves or bringing ourselves the perspective into this sense of being completely interpenetrating with each other's lives. So that means, if I decide that, oh God, I don't like that person, so I'm just going to blank them. What are we doing there? It's actually a very destructive, violent act, you could say, about ourselves. That part of myself, which is out there, is unacceptable. Therefore, I have to resist, stay out of relationship to that part of my experience. And if we're recognizing that we're completely interwoven and interdependent, what are we trying to do there? Are we trying to manipulate this whole system of interdependence to avoid the discomfort of being in relationship to something which is not as we wish it to be? And that creates the whole basis for conflict, for destructive behavior. The whole ecological crisis is based upon the fact that we are pretending that we are somehow separate and that our actions aren't completely interwoven with life, with each other. So the more we can get hold of that as a practice, the more we have this potential to really open as a community. So this is really what we're doing simply by being aware of the breath. That simple act of just being in awareness with this vertical axis and the horizontal starts to build this sense of being completely interpenetrating with the world. And we can know it here in this space because we can get a sense that this space is existing because of the support, the gifts, the practice that's taken place here has created the conditions for us to benefit, to draw on those conditions for our own life. We breathe in the practice of others that has been going on here for I don't know how long, but certainly from here we can track it back to the time of the Buddha. That people have been working, not just in Buddhism, but as we're in that lineage, we're working to come into relationship to our direct, immediate experience in order to support others. So the invitation is just to turn up, to be here, to be aware of what is happening in our experience. And that is sufficient. That is the gift that we give the Sangha. It's the gift we bring to the world, is taking kind of full responsibility for our own being, our own relationships, our own interconnected life. And we do that simply by coming back to the breath. Be with the breath. Know what the breath is indicating, what it's pointing to, and just allowing that to become more and more visible.